guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, our main objective is going to be trying to get this whole powertrain out of here with the suspension, the cradle is just one big assembly, and then I'll be placing it right over here. So this bay will be just for the parts. I'm not going to put any more cars over here. That's why I moved the Hellcat out of the way. The Hellcat should be leaving the shop tomorrow, and then we'll be getting the doors off and then getting the body work done. And then when it gets back, I'm gonna try to get that alignment done, and then we'll drive it, make sure everything is okay, and get it ready for the customer. And I have to get the airbags as well. But so let's get started on this. As you've seen before the video started, I had to get those doors off. I had a customer who got here pretty early. I wasn't expecting him to get here that fast, so I had to get those doors off real quick before we started our video. And I got the hood off because I have another customer who's picking that up tomorrow. So let's get started. You guys seen me pull a 3.6 motor out before, so let's get started. I know you guys have watched me pull out a V6 motor, which was really easy. I've never put on camera me pulling out a V8, so this will be the first time. Basically, it's the same concept. I know it looks like it's a lot more technical, but you know, in reality, it's just the same thing. You got your heater core lines that go through the firewall, your fuel line, your brake lines, and all the other stuff. So we'll go through it one step by step, and we'll get this thing out of here. All right, so real quick, I am gonna be working alone, so I'll be recording and working at the same time. But just to give you a quick breakdown of what am I gonna do now, we have to pull this cowl off so we can access the heater core lines behind there, and also the fuel line, which is right behind the motor. So you'll pull off this top piece, and then there's two bolts on each side that hold the cowl down and the bracket. Of course, to do that, you gotta take off the wiper blades, just remove these caps. And then you have, I believe they're 14 millimeters inside of here. I haven't done it in a while. So you'll take off the wiper blades, take off the cowl, all this stuff will come off, and then you'll have access to everything that's under here. Take off the air cleaner, get that out of the way. Take off your reservoir. Make sure you take off your AC lines, because when you're dropping down the motor, these things will, you know, keep it restricted so the motor won't come down. So make sure you take those AC lines off. And these, you can worry about them later. You could just, because as you can see, it's kind of a tight fit. All right, so these over here, you don't have to worry about it now because the motor is coming down, not up. If you wanted to, you could take them off now, but just for me, it's looks like it's a lot more work because there's not enough room in here. But these run from the firewall to the frame rail, and then they go to this reservoir for the brake fluid, and then they come back here for the ABS unit. So let's get started. First of all, I gotta disconnect the brake lines, make sure those drain, and then I'll show you how to do things step by step. So let me get my tripod set up, and then we'll get started. So starting with this side, you'll just need a little pick tool. I wouldn't recommend you using a pry tool because this cap will get damaged. So just a small pin, and you'll insert it right in here, and then pop these caps off just like that, and then you have your screw inside here. It looks like a 14. I'm gonna double check now. All right, so it's actually a 15, not a 14. So you'll break it loose. And then for me, the easiest way to remove these, because they don't come off when you do that, just pry it down just like this. And they come off really easy. And then you could just put the screw or the nut back on here, so you could avoid it from getting mixed up with other bolts. And that's it. So you'll repeat the same process to the other wiper blade, take that off, and then we'll use our trim tool to take off those retainers or clips that hold this cowl down to the frame. So both wiper blades are off. Now we are going to remove this piece over here. And then, I don't know if you guys can see it, the car is sitting higher than what I usually set it at. But these things over here, you'll just use one of these, pop them off. And then in here, they just slide through. So there's nothing holding it from the inside. Just pops off, and then I'll show you how to do that now. As you can see, the whole thing came off. What I meant by where it sits in the windshield, See these little spots for it? You just give it a little budge and it snaps right out. And then you have these 2 bolts on each side. These two, and then you have 2 more on the other side. And this is the bracket that holds the wiper blade motor down and your PCM right over there. Right in there. So we'll take those off now. Those are 13 millimeters. They are longer bolts. So make sure you keep those in a safe spot so you're not gonna mix them up. And we'll move on to taking off the heater core lines. So that bracket is out of the way, the wiper blade motor is out of the way, and this connector over here, I couldn't show you guys while I was doing it, but you have a lock, this red lock over here, you press it down, and then this thing over here, you press in and slide it this way, and this connector will come right off. And that's your PCM right in there. And then these are the heater core lines. You got 1 and 2. And the fuel line is right over there. See that metal tab right there? And I'll show you guys how to take that off. Make sure you take the AC lines off, like I said. And we'll keep moving, see how far we get. Now I can't do this while I'm recording, but just pretty simple. Just put your clamp in there. You can use pliers, a needle nose, whatever you could just to fit in there. Slide it around and then pop these 2 off, which I'll do now. So I couldn't set up the tripod, but it's right over there. Let me see if I can move it out the way for you. This one over here. I already disconnected it, but just sitting in there. Now we're gonna move on to the AC lines. We're gonna take these two 13 millimeters off, and then we'll have to disconnect the steering column, which is right, damn, it's hard to see it, but can you see that bolt? Let's see if I get you guys a better, right there, that 10 millimeter. That will disconnect the steering column from the rack and pinion. So when you drop it down, of course, your steering column is not gonna be dragging. And we'll do that, then we'll move on. I'll show you what to do next. Here's the steering column bolt. As you can see, it's a 10 mil, but it's a little bit longer. And this is especially for the rack, so you don't wanna get this mixed up with a different one. So that's out of the way. Now I'm gonna take off the air cleaner and the reservoir, get those out of the way, and we'll move on to the suspension. And I'll show you what to do next. So that's it. You got your just a Phillips or a flathead screw. You just unloosen that, and the whole snot will come right off. For your reservoir, you got two 10 millimeter bolts, the ones I just showed you. And now we're gonna move on to removing the caps for the strut, which is pretty simple. Get your little tool in there. And these pop off. Same goes to the other side. Just like that. And what I like to do is put the bolts in here for each side, and then I'll set them somewhere else. And we'll take off these 3 13 mils on each side, and this will drop the strut with the suspension once we get ready to do that. So I'll decide to do that, and then we'll move on to the brake lines right over here. So just like that, you got 3 on this side, 3 on the other side. And what I forgot is to take you guys under the car. We have to disconnect the drive shaft from the trans, which is a big problem if you don't do it now. Let me get under here. Right over there. I think there's 6 bolts. They're T50s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the last step you're gonna do is take off these trans bolts for the mount, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But of course, we're gonna have to remove the exhaust. You're gonna loosen up these clamps on each side, and the exhaust will go back. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the exhaust in there for now. I'm just gonna loosen up the clamps, and I'm gonna keep the cats on as well, and I'll take it off as one big piece. Hopefully my my cherry picker can support all that, but let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna remove those bolts, and then we'll go back up front and work on the brake lines. All right, so I tried to like do a little shortcut, but it didn't end up working. So the exhaust has to come off because you cannot reach the bolts for the drive shaft, which look like this. Like these over here. So I couldn't fit a gun in there or a ratchet or a wrench or anything, so the exhaust had to come out so you have room to work with this. And once that's out of the way, I disconnected the electrical power steering connectors like that. You have your power wire that runs from this fuse box to the motor. This is part of the whole engine harness, so make sure you take that off. And now you got your main connector for the engine harness that comes to the PCM. You'll disconnect that, put it to the side, and then you have your ground, which come right here. Just take it off. It's 10 millimeter. And you got 2 grounds, 1 and 2. And this will all push aside because this is coming off with the motor. This will come off with the interior harness, which we'll do later. But now we're gonna disconnect the brake lines from each side, so the caliper will stay on the knuckle. And then we'll take off the upper control arm bolt like how we did on the Gen 2. And then I'll take off the control arms once I have room, because it's a little bit tight in there. You got 1 right there and 1 right in here. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll start dropping this thing. It's almost ready to come out. All right, so here's the line. It's a 12 mil. Just loosen it up. All right, so the brake lines are off, and I disconnected it from the frame. There's a 10 millimeter bolt that holds it right there. And then now I'm gonna take off the upper control arm, 18 mil. Don't take it off all the way because you're gonna have to hammer the ball joint to break it loose. Then hold it down. All right, so this one's spinning, so you gotta press it down with a pry bar, and then you can take off this nut on the bottom. Just like that. And be careful because the ball joint is under pressure, so it'll come out flying. Just like that. And then what you can do is just put the nut back on there. All right, move on to the other side, and we're gonna get ready to take off the cradle. All right, so this is the driver's side. Hopefully this one comes off easier. All right, that's good. And then you can just put this back on, temporary. Then hammer the ball joint. Now we're gonna get ready to take off the 4 bolts of the cradle. There's one right there, one in the front, and 2 on the other side. Now to install your cherry picker, make sure you get some seatbelts. And what I did, instead of installing them to the manifolds, I put them to the cradle itself in the bottom. So I don't know if you can see down there. It's actually tying to the cradle, not the exhaust manifold. So just tie them together, make a knot on the top, just like this. And then you put your hook through here, and then that should be good enough. Make sure you disconnect these AC lines. These will hook, and the motor won't come down if these are still connected. So let's get this installed. Put it through your hook. Remember the trans mount is still installed. I didn't take that off. That'll be your last step before you drop everything down. Put some tension on this. Make sure the seat belt is not going to crunch any of your spark plug wires. Okay, other side. All right, everything looks good. Now what you want to do is put some tension on this, so when you take off the cradle, it's not going to snap. Just like that. Now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this 4 jack, and I'm gonna support the trans from the back, so it's not gonna be tilting sideways. And take off the trans mount bolts and take off the cradle bolts, and this whole thing will come down. All right, so I got the transmission bolts off. Now one last thing before we come down, you gotta take off this vacuum off the brake booster. Just slides off like that. There's no clamps or anything. And now we're ready to come down. Everything else should be loose. Make sure. Got that, got that. Oh, then we have this for the neutral switch. We gotta disconnect it from the trans. And I'll do that now, and then we should be good to go. This is on the bottom of the trans. There's 2 bolts to hold it. All right, so what I ended up doing is just disconnecting this from the shifter. It's a lot easier than trying to come it off from the trans, take it off from the trans. So now we're ready to take off the cradle bolts and drop the whole powertrain. So I already took off the one from the front. You got the one in the back right over here. Okay, you got 2 on the other side. You got 1 in the front over here. They're all the same, so even if you mix them up, they're the same size. And here's the last one right here. That's it. Are you ready to come down? Okay, now I got the jack in the back, so I gotta lower that too to make it even. So this over here, come down. Okay, drop this one a little bit more. Do it evenly so that the powertrain is level. Just like that. All right, looks like we're good to go. So what you're gonna have to do is when you bring it forward, you're gonna have to disconnect your hook and then bring it under these ABS lines so you're not gonna be bending these. So I'm gonna come down a little bit more. There we go. Now we're gonna take off the hook. because right now it's sitting on the leg, so I could drag it forward. Come down a little bit more. Take it off the hook right here. Okay. Now let's pull it forward, and it should move with the jack. So now the suspension is hitting right over here. So you want to pull it over. Same on the other side. It's hitting the liner. So bring that up. And we should be good to go. Just check slowly, make sure you're not holding anything up. Everything looks good so far. So keep on going. That's it. All right, guys, so that's gonna be it. The powertrain's out, everything's good to go. As you can see, the engine bay is cleared. So next time we're back here, we're gonna work on cleaning this up, take off the wiring harness that goes to this fuse box, all those ABS lines, and make sure everything's cleaned up. And then we'll move on to the interior and start stripping down the interior. Then hopefully by next week, when we can have the 300 in here and start stripping that down. So that's gonna be it for today's video. I got the powertrain out of the way. That way we could fit some cars in here. But until next time, make sure you stay tuned. We're gonna continue to strip this thing down. And like I said, hopefully we'll get the other car in here, get everything together, and then maybe get a first startup. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for the support, and I'll see you on the next video.